Hi everybody, and welcome to my little conversation about all things assessments. And as Patrina quite nicely introduced me, my name's Denise Armstrong. I'm a member of the APDT, and that's my number 01215. And I have an MSc in clinical animal behaviour from the University of Lincoln, and currently I'm the chair of the APDT. I also have a plethora of various qualifications. I run red dog training at the Adventure Park, which is a freedom park by where we live. I'm a member of the PPG. I'm a graduate of Jean Donaldson's Academy, certified VSPDT, an SA Pro trainer, and obviously being a member of the APDT, and this is partly what assessments is all about, I am a registered animal training instructor with the ABTC. And as you can see on the right, last but not least, the APDT is also a member organisation of the UK Dog Behaviour and Training Charter. All of this is relevant to why you want to become a member of the APDT. So I will crack on. If anybody has any questions at all, I think Patrina will pop in and collect them and we'll discuss them as we go. Or do you want to save them to the end? Not quite sure. We'll see how we get on with that. So tonight, what we're going to be walking through is the assessments, how we came to our assessment process, why choose us, just some questions to ask before you do your assessment. Are you ready, for example? We're going to have a look at the theory, the practical, the oral, and obviously at the very end have some questions and answer sessions. So this is your chance to ask anything that you'd like to know about the assessment process itself. We're trying to demystify it for you and obviously make it more attractive if knowledge is key here, really. So let's start with the evolution of assessment. So for this, I'd like to thank Val Harvey for her input and some of her historical development for us. So in the past, before the APDT was created, dog training was unregulated, and it still is, very sadly. We strive to achieve regulation and we're working really slowly, but the wheels of legislation turn so slow. But in 1995, a collection of like-minded dog trainers came together and agreed to sign up to a charter or a code of practice. And this self-declared collective agreed to be continuing training on a positive, kind, fair and effective manner. And they started off with their criteria for that, for being a member of the APDT. And obviously, as word spread as to the quality of the people that were involved, people wanted to join. And then the conundrum is how do we make sure that those who want to join are of the same standard as us? So what they had created was like a vetting process, like a mini assessment process. And that used to involve anybody that wanted to join would submit dates of when their classes were running or available, and a nominated person that was deemed sane and sensible would attend one of those sessions and take notes on the session that they observed and have a conversation with the individual afterwards. And then that's where sometimes the individuals who were doing the assessing would either submit a full report or say a yes or no, or a brief context, or give marks and scoring. And so with time, it became quite clear that some form of standardization amongst the assessors themselves was key to developing a much more structured approach to accepting people in for membership, or rather offering membership of our association. So in 2006, it was agreed to implement a standardization of what is it that we would like to see from our new members joining us, what's the standard that we would like people to have and demonstrate to us. And at the same time, that criteria was developed was also helping the creation of the foundation of the ABTC when they were developing their ATI. I'm aware there's a lot of acronyms here, but stick with us. So the ABTC, we helped provide the initial assessment process and set them off and running with that. So that was in the past. So where we are now, the present, is that as late as 2022 was our last massive big current review of our process, and we went through an enormous review of it. And so we've come up with the process that we're walking you through today, which I want to remind you is the full acceptance into the APDT. That's the route of I want to join and I need to demonstrate my knowledge and my practical skill sets at the moment. So that's the proper full assessment process we're doing. So we'd like to remind people that when you present yourself for assessment, you do not need to have completed our courses. We allow unrestricted access to being an assessor with the big caveats, which is what we're talking about later on. Preparation is key. So we don't say that you've got to do our courses in order to be admitted to the APDT. You need to demonstrate that you meet the criteria that we set and laid down for you. So the current assessment is in two parts. Which is a theory part to it and a practical part to it. The theory covers all the knowledge and understanding, and the practical part is the demonstration of the application of your skill sets. The current process is very, very much more criteria specific, and it's that I want to help you understand a little bit more about. And again, once you've completed an assessment and you're invited to join the APDT, you are also able to join the ABTC ATI register. That's an additional membership fee that you pay, that is paid to the ABTC to be on their national global register as an animal training instructor. So the animal training instructor is to a level 4 of educational grading, and that's the skill sets that we're looking for you to achieve. So why would you want to choose us and to become a member? So not only do you list on our website, which has 15,000 hits per month and rising, I think that was last year's figure. So you also have access to become an ATI on the ABTC register as well. We provide low-cost CPD for members, and this is part of your ongoing code of practice, is that you agree to adhere to not less than 15 hours per year of CPD, and that's continuous professional development. We have a network of like-minded supported members, and we have an active Facebook group where we can support each other and bounce ideas off. I'm stuck for this training or that particular training area. We have a regular newsletter which updates members on our APDT activities and the news from the board. We have development opportunities within the APDT and beyond in terms of skill sets and courses in the pipeline. We have a very rigorous assessment process, and I could say earlier, you don't need to have completed our courses to put yourself forward for assessment. And we make no bones about the fact that we are rigorous, we are standard, we are the ones to achieve, we are the ones that set the bar at the beginning, and we continue to do so. The ABTC, there's a spelling mistake there, ABTC practitioner organisation. So we were at the very beginnings of the support behind the ABTC, who's our independent oversight, if you want to say. And we're also a member of the charter group. And the biggest thing of why you'd want to join us is that we're a not-for-profit organisation. There's very, very few of us. In fact, there's only 2 of us left now, where any of the money that we raise is immediately ploughed back into raising the profile of kind, fair and effective training. And we're very conscious of the standards are unknown, and it's a minefield out there because of the lack of legislation, that members of the public need some level of quality assurance that they know when they sign up to a trainer, that trainer knows and understands exactly what it is that they're trying to achieve and help them with their dog. So let's move into walking about through the actual assessment process. So first question to ask yourself, are you ready? And this sounds a bit silly, but please, 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 we've got a little run of captions there. One of them is, and the first one is, have you read the website and understand who we are, what we're about, and how we operate? I'm an assessor. I've been an assessor now for 4 years, and it's not unknown for somebody to get through the theory and all the way through to the practical and then fall at the last hurdle and not understand what our code of practice means. You can fail in your practical if you are in breach of the code of practice throughout your practical. You can also fail your theory if you are recommending equipment which on our code of practice we are restricted from using. There's better, kind, fair and effective ways than using shock and tightening and all sorts of things. So number 2, have you have enough experience? So by experience, this means have you been out there and have you assisted in classes? Have you started taking your classes? Have you started developing the experience of working with dogs and or people? And we recommend about 2 years is a really nice bedrock of experience. You're not going to see everything within your first year or within your first week or your first day. So gathering the experience, because that really puts those candidates apart from the others. So the third thing, which is mentioned, it was mentioned yesterday, and we go to this industry because we like dogs, we like to train dogs, but actually it's much more than that. Do you like teaching people? Because it's the people that are in charge of the handlers who are looking after their pets. And if you can't teach the person, then the potential welfare of that dog is compromised. So getting on with people, teaching people, understanding how and adapting your teaching styles to suit the individual or the group that you see in front of you. So do you have adaptable training skills? And by adaptable, I love doing assessments because I learn something new every day in that, well, that's a different way of doing that. I'm going to keep that one for my kit bag. So things like teaching it down. It sounds simple enough, but there are so many different ways of teaching it down and different ways of adapting it. So can you adapt your skills within the practical? We'll talk about that later on to suit what you see in front of you. And the fifth one is, can you teach a class and also demonstrate that you can coach an individual? So we quite rightly expect you to be able to teach a group of people. And I put this akin to driving tests. So when most people do their driving tests, they do it in a manual, which then allows them to drive a manual car and also an automatic car. If you take your driving license and you only have an automatic, it restricts you to an automatic only, and you don't have the skill sets to drive a manual. So it's the same thing for our assessment. You are expected to teach a class, and within that class, demonstrate that you can coach individuals as well. So very rigorous standards. So it's not about passing an assessment just to coach an individual. Many of our members after do continue on and specialise in one-to-ones, but having the skill set and demonstrating that you can teach a class is what it's about. And finally, have you read our code of practice? Have you prepared and do you understand what you're signing up to with the code of practice? You are being assessed as an animal training instructor, not a behaviourist and not an animal trainer. You are being assessed as an animal training instructor, and that means understanding your limitations. The fact that you may go off and do qualifications with other organisations and or companies, but as an animal training instructor, you are restricted in what you are able to do, and understanding your limits and referring up and referring down and where you need to seek that information. Do you understand where our restrictions are within the code of practice? So, and one of the code of practice items is obviously carrying insurance. So that members of the public know that when they choose an APDT accredited instructor, that person also carries insurance. They have signed up to the code of practice of kind, fair and effective. And that's where we're about. So making sure that you're prepared and ready to just take the final step, which is, yes, I want to demonstrate that I have the skill sets to achieve membership of the Association of Pet Dog Trainers. So the process. That's my Charlie boy, he's 13, by the way. So the process for the APDT, you book your theory, And this year's entire assessment process, for those who are interested, was £275. And that puts us in the middle of the market. We're no more expensive and we're not the cheapest, but we have, and there's a reason why it's £275. You book your theory first, you book your oral, and then you'll book your practical, and then you'll arrive at your venue to attend and can deliver your practical. So there's quite a long process there. And for next year, the theory and the theory oral are completely separate, in that at the moment it was a bit restrictive and tied up this year, in that you would do your theory, you'd book everything all at once. But this time it's going to be pass your theory, pass your oral, which is a combined thing, and then you'll be allowed to book your practical and choose the venue. So that's next year's process, but this year's process was a complete whole kit and caboodle. Let's talk about going into the theory section of the actual assessment process. The key principles that we're looking for within the theory part is, do you have the knowledge and the understanding of these 4 categories? Can you understand animal health and welfare? Do you demonstrate that you understand learning and training, animal husbandry management and welfare legislation, communication and instruction? So they're big headlines. And underneath those sit an enormous number of criteria which we're looking for you to demonstrate that you really do know this stuff. And this is where your answers, which should be your own answers, and we know when they're not your own answers, by the way. We're experienced enough to know that, which is where the oral boards are coming into their own now. But that's those are the headlines, and I'm going to show you what a small breakdown of something like one of those would be. So under the theory, the candidates, you will receive your candidates package, which will contain your theory questions. And when those theory questions have been answered and submitted, and we like you to submit a photo as well so we know what you look like, because I'll show you our lot later. And then after you've had your theory submitted, it'll be submitted online, and an assessor will be nominated to assess and review that theory. And this is what we're going to go through next, is like what you see versus the background, what goes on behind the scenes. So it's all done online, it's marked online, and you are advised and told of your results. So I'm going to show you an example of the candidates' questions here. So theory section 1, learning theory. And this is and part of some of the struggles that we get from candidates is that they actually haven't really read the question properly. So this question is explain in your own words what is meant by, and there's classical operant and quadrants, and give examples of their uses, effects and potential consequences, positive and negative, in dog training. So that just looks like a very simple question, but there's a lot of marks that are riding on this question, and because we are a very science-based organization, even anything that you engage with an animal can always be broken down to one of these 3 areas, well, 2 areas, 2.5 areas really. So understanding the principles at work, such that when you see something happening, you're able to understand, actually I need to change the antecedent, or actually I need to change the consequence here because the behavior I'm seeing is not going in the right direction. And the techniques, so these are 2 samples of some questions. So the techniques one is about explaining each technique, use and consideration when used, training in accordance to the APDT Code of Practice, and being mindful that when you answer your theory questions, you have to answer and remain compliant within the Code of Practice. So if you're discussing a piece of equipment, such as an electric shock collar, and you say, I would recommend this, that is an immediate fail. That's outside of our Code of Practice, and it is not acceptable in a modern training society, full stop, period. So you would fail immediately on that, and you would have you'd be told the reasons why. So it's working through the theory questions with the Code of Practice in mind when you're answering these questions. So what does that look like on the other side? So when we're marking the questions, that learning theory question you just saw previously, we're looking for, there's 6 marks for your description of it. So we're looking for all the name drops. Do you understand how it works? And we're looking for a use, an example, and the effect of classical conditioning and a consequence of it. So that's linking through your words. Can I describe it? Can I describe when it would be used? The effects and the consequences. So those use, effect, and consequence was in the previous question, which was the candidate's question. So under operant conditioning, can you describe it? And then in the 4 quadrants, can you explain each one? Use, when would you use them, and what their effects are and the consequences. So those explain, use, and effect with the consequence were all in the question. So if you don't answer, or if you're not able to give consequences, then you'll be losing 4 marks for each of the 4 1 mark each quadrant, so 4 marks overall. So techniques, so here again, the words that you saw in the previous question were explain, use, and consider. So what are the considerations around luring and capturing and manipulation? And manipulation, by the way, is physical manipulation, is what we're looking for you to explain it. So just because physical manipulation might be in the question, it's not something that we would recommend, but you need to understand it to understand what, when you see it potentially happening with your clients. So knowing about it, you need to know about these things, but it's not necessarily things that you'll be using. If you understand it, then you can see, when you see it, you'll understand it and you'll know how to address it because of the considerations about what's being seen in front of you. So those are the general run through of a couple of sample questions for the theory. So my biggest take home for the theory is, please read the question and do not do a Google search and copy and paste, because we pick up that. And do not be tempted to use AI to source your answer either, because in the theory oral board, that is where we will ask you, so in your own words again, just talk me through this, so that we know that you really do understand what it is that you've done, not copied, but what you've done. And that depth of understanding is becoming much more with the oral board. I hate the word oral, I would call it a conversation myself, but having a conversation about those the things that you've written down, because we know that if you don't understand it, and we can tell as well when a paper is a copy and paste in your own words, it changes. So there's a top tip from an assessor. We know, you can't hide it from us. So let's talk about the practical. So you've passed your theory and it's brilliant, and we then ask you to book your practical. So you can't book your practical until you've passed your theory. That's for your own benefit as well as ours as well, but really it's for your own benefit. It's pointless booking a practical together with your theory and you struggle with the theory and then you go, I'm not ready for the practical, and you lose out, we lose out, everybody loses out. So that's not fair. So that's why they're now split and divided at the moment, for next year. Sorry, not at the moment, for next year. So the practical, the practical for, I would say, everybody is the hardest part, because it's in person. You've got 2 assessors in a corner of a room who'll be watching you, and we all feel judged. We've all been there. All the members have been assessed at some point, and we do know how it feels from the other side. We've all been there. So we understand nerves play a part in it, but on the day, this is what's going to happen on the day. So you'll have booked your venue, and I would recommend that when you book your venue, that you have a look at the venue's website, how you're going to get there, and the time of which your assessment is booked in for. So the day itself literally runs back to back like clockwork. There's about 10-15 minutes between each candidate before the next one takes over. And across a weekend, we have 2 pairs of assessors, and we will assess 8 candidates across a weekend. And they do book out really fast. So we run a waiting list for our assessments now. But the venue, check it out, the website, because the website of the venue may very well give you a clue, because it's an unknown for you guys. It may give you a clue as to what the surface might be like, where the windows, the exits are, what do I need to consider. And it just helps put your mind at rest that you've done your research and you've seen what they've got. And like I say, how you're going to get there. And and timings. But don't panic if you're late. There's when you're given instructions to join, don't panic. We will bend over backwards to try to help you if we can, but the rest of the assessments run back to back. So on arrival, you'll meet your host, and all the assessors will greet you at the door, and we will try and put you at rest, and we will talk you through what's going to happen. Always arrive before. Nobody's ever arrived after deliberately, but arrive in good time, about half an hour beforehand, and get yourself breathing, get yourself a cup of coffee if you need coffee, and then getting all your equipment out of the car. And we'll talk about equipment in a minute. And the class that you'll be teaching will be 4 dogs and their handlers. So we aim for 4 dogs. Of the past, it used to be 6 dogs, but because of the venues, it's not fair on you nor the dogs, because it might be not their normal venue, and it puts too much pressure on you. We want to get the best out of you, and we find that having 4 dogs is a good enough stretch for a class. And the handlers are usually APDT current trainers' clients, and so they're there to just do what you tell them to do, and within reason. And so don't panic. And the dogs are chosen. Then some, like I say, the dogs will arrive, and please, part of your um, role is to judge as well. If a dog is struggling, if it's been car sick on the way there and it's just gone all barky and it's not settling, don't be frightened of saying, I actually don't think this dog should stay in this class. Don't be frightened of saying that, and just let the assessors know your thoughts on that. Equipment, we get a lot of questions asked about what equipment is provided for my assessment, and the answer is chairs and water bowls. So some venues and some hosts will have barriers available to you, but don't rely on that. So come prepared with the equipment that you want to use within your class, that you've got planned. If you think and you normally use barriers, then use them, bring them. So remember, you can have dogs of any age, young or old. So the equipment that you provide should really cover that. So, but barriers aren't a given. So if you want barriers and you can't carry them, always ask the office, to ask the host if they have them available. We've had people well, I have to say, one of the most impressive ones I ever saw was somebody that flew over for an assessment, and I don't know how they managed to carry the equipment that they did in their rucksack. It was amazing, brilliant. But obviously she couldn't carry barriers. So that's part of the equipment provided. So the just water bowls and chairs. The assessors who will be there, they will observe you and the dogs in your care. And the dogs go into your care during your session, but should an assessor observe, because you've not seen it, something happening, and they may approach the handler and maybe give them some spare time outside. So don't be worried about what the assessors are doing, but they try to blend into the background. We really try our hardest to shrink away into the corner, because we know nobody likes being watched, and it's trying to, but they will write so much, and you'll think they're writing stop. What have I done wrong? What have I done wrong? It's not what have I done wrong. It's like some of the reports, it's like, that's brilliant, I love that, this is really good. So they literally, everything they see, they will write down. Everything they hear, they will write down. So they're just literally in the corner scribing away. So why do we have two observers as well? As because this is a very much more do I see it or do I not see it, and removing the subjective approach to much more of an objective criteria. Did I see it or did I not see it? When you've got 2 observers, they can confer that, yes, actually, I saw that. I saw the evidence that this happened. And the other person, the other observer, may have been watching a different dog. So 2 assessors observe for your benefit. So number 6 is just be you. Don't deliver what you think we want to see. Deliver what you would do in your normal class. Now, it's a bit of a falsehood, because you are told what to deliver in terms of the tasks ahead of you, which is introducing a marker and introducing loose lead walking, a down, and a leave it. I know leave it can be controversial in some circles, but we choose those because it allows us to see you demonstrate a lot of the criteria that needs to be met. So things like introducing a marker doesn't have to be a clicker. It's just introduce a marker. We don't tell you what type of marker to introduce, but we want to know that you can deliver it at the handler's understanding. So you're not blinding them with science. We know the science. We know you know the science because you've told us so in your theory. It's can you deliver at the understanding and comprehension level for the handlers? Can you capture a down? Can you capture a moment and say, that's brilliant? So we're looking for you to deliver, be natural, but yes, we're looking for these 4 exercises specifically because within those 4 exercises, they meet different criteria for us to observe that you do have the skill sets in your kit bag. Now, itself, when you're doing your practical, things do go wrong, and they will go wrong, but they'll only go wrong in your head wrong. What we see is that's brilliant because they've just responded to something. That's really good. They were adaptable, they were flexible, and they were able to demonstrate that they could respond and adapt to what was being presented to them. So do not worry about things going wrong at all. It happens in normal lessons, let alone false lessons. So don't panic is our advice for that. So the performance criteria that we're looking for you is can you create, which is part of your original theory, implement and adapt and as necessary a structured lesson plan. Can you structure it? Can you keep to time? Do you demonstrate and show within your lesson plan how you would grow? Okay, so we're looking for you to create, adapt, and as necessary a structured lesson. So you're delivering criteria is being demonstrated and met, that you can also then demonstrate the ability to teach a group, manage and develop learners. And that is learners, plural, that's people and dogs. So can you manage a group and can you develop a group? But the group development comes about through the individual coaching. So we expect you to talk to the group, control the group, and then go in and deliver individual coaching. And can you adapt the exercises to accommodate those learners? So learners, in terms of that, would be on part of your very brief intake, and your brief intake form informs you as to where you're going to position people. And we will ask you why did you put them there and this, that, and the other, but can you adapt the exercises as well? So if somebody says to you at the beginning, I really struggle to bend down with my knees, then we would expect you, if we've seen your lesson plan includes getting down on the floor and kneeling on the floor to teach you down, the way we would expect you to adapt that for them. So being adaptable throughout your lesson. So the practical, so you are given the criteria that we're looking for ahead of the practical. So it should not be a surprise to you that, it's a very comprehensive list. And I'm going to show you just a sample of what you see versus how we then mark it so that we can talk through that. So this might be your list this is a very small section of, it's called PR1 because it's part of our cross-referencing. So we mark the arrival. When you're talking to them, do you review the questions? Most importantly, do you allergy check the people and the dogs? Part of your initial communication, how do you speak to the group? Are you checking equipment? If we don't see you check it, we'll be checking it as well as an assessor. And class management, have you got your lesson plan? If you've forgotten it, don't fall apart. We've got them. We always have them printed off and ready. We'll just hand you your lesson plan. And appropriate equipment items to support your lesson, and a variety of reinforcers, which we all know is not necessarily all just food. It's have you got a variety of reinforcers to suit your lesson. So what does that look like on the other side? It's quite simple. So the intake questions, did you review them? The really brief ones. So did you ask their name? Have you checked for allergies? Any health requirements? Dog behavioural issues? Shouldn't have any, but you never know. Like say, you might have travelled and got upset on the way there. Any dietary needs? And the initial communication, were they welcoming? These are all effectively yes, no answers. And that is what we're looking for within the practical. Is the criteria, did I see the criteria? Yes, no. It's not, yeah, sort of, I'll give them half a mark. It's yes, no. Did you see it or not see it? And if we do not see something, then that gets moved into the oral. So we ask you, so don't worry. So part of, just go back to here. So like on the equipment, the lesson plan is available and the layout, why did you position the dogs? Were they suitable for the venue and the exercises that you had? So I have had people in an assessment. There's an enormous hall. My venue is an enormous hall. It's a big hall. It's badminton court sized. So it's a big hall, and I have seen people through nerves only set out the class for halfway across the hall, and I'm thinking, are they working behind? And it was just pure nerves. They didn't really think, I'm going to put everybody at the back on the wall so that there's more space for everybody to move. So that was interesting, but asking them, but it was just pure nerves. So, but going back to the criteria, if we don't see it, we will ask you in the oral. We need to know that you either can demonstrate it, and it's not your fault if something doesn't present itself for you to be unable to demonstrate it. So, for example, management of dogs that might be having an issue with each other. Sometimes the classes are just like immaculate dogs, which is really nice, but we haven't seen you demonstrate that you can resolve a potential issue arising. So we would ask you that in the oral. We also have specific questions for the oral, which are also included within your package for the practical. So we go down the list and they're in orange. I apologise for the colour, but they're there to prompt the assessors. This is the assessor's mark sheet here. And so they are marked in the practical. So I'm just going to stick here on the practical for a minute. So once you've done your practical and you've completed your oral, both assessors will work through their sheets together and feedback. So when we see good stuff and when we see stuff has been missed, we'll give feedback, but we'll say we talked about it in the oral board. So you do get feedback on your oral and your practical. And once we've done that, it's usually quite quick, but we say, within 2 weeks you will hear of the result. But because a lot of online, we don't have to post things anymore by snail mail. It's usually quite quick, but we try to release the results for a assessment weekend for everybody on the same time so that nobody's disadvantaged. We've been working through a new system this year and we've almost got it 100% fail safe, but it's not to say this year some things haven't been going a little bit. Learning curve, I think, is the word that we use. So you will hear about your results within 2 weeks, and you'll be invited to, you'll be offered and invited to become a full member of the APDT or not. And if not, the assessors will validate and provide you with the feedback you need for the areas where you fell down on. And part of the revisions to our process is that we also now have an appeals process in place. Many moons ago, it was not the situation, but the appeals only exists in terms of did the assessors follow the process. You can't necessarily appeal the actual result because if you practically failed because, and the evidence was there, you didn't achieve this, you'd not failed, but you didn't evidence this and you didn't understand it in the oral board afterwards, what we were talking about or what you should have done. So that's evidence. It was either yes or no. So appealing the result itself, that's no. We can only appeal against was policy and process followed. So, and that the dates and the timelines are available in the sheets that accompany all of this. So moving on to accessibility, um, help us, part of this would be help us to help you. So we don't know if you need accommodations unless you ask us. And where it's reasonable and feasible, we will accommodate personal and physical differences, provided no other candidate is disadvantaged by us making these adjustments. I.e., we can't allow you an advantageous gain because of the accommodations, but because we have this standard to keep to, which is, have you met the criteria? If we can accommodate you, so do you need additional time for your theory because of struggling with the reading, or in the venues? A lot of the issues tend to be around venues, so lighting, accessibility, the timings of those particular events, the types of dogs. You may have a particular issue with particular dogs, in which, well, that's not really fair to say actually, but it's more about if you have an issue with certain dogs. So you couldn't necessarily say, I don't want any three-legged dogs in my class, because you get three-legged dogs turn up for sessions. We can accommodate, like if you let us know in advance that you're pregnant, we can make accommodations in terms of, well, do you need help and assistance lifting and bringing your equipment in? Because normally these assessors wouldn't do that. It's all about you setting up your class by yourself for the best of your ability. So where we can, we will accommodate you. And we've recently made quite a lot of adjustments for some people in our assessments in the past. So just let us know. If we don't know, we can't help you. We are nice people. And moving on to the people, let me introduce you to the assessment team from 2023. So there's a lot of us. There's the head of assessments, Michelle, and newly appointed administration for assessments is Pamela. And Carol's been hosting assessments for years and years. Sandra is wearing her dog aid get up there. So moving on, we've got Barbara, we have Keith, Margaret, Kay, Kimberly, me, Denise, Helen. It turns out, I think is possibly our oldest member of one of the oldest members of the APDT and longest standing serving assessors. We've got Caris down south, Susan and Tony over to the east, Joanne south, and Hannah and Jenny and Adam and Jane. So that's part of our team. So the team is growing. We grow our assessors numbers. We've got another assessment intake assessor training course in November. And for those who want to know, how do you become an assessor? Well, the minimum is, as a minimum requirement to become an assessor, you have to have been a full member delivering classes for 2 years before we ask who would like to be an assessor. And then we have a weekend training course for the assessors to go through, where they're taught all the skill sets needed to be an assessor. So that's happening for our group. So the team will grow, and the more assessors we have, we're able to and deliver assessments easier and make it much more accommodating for everybody. So I'd like to give you some feedback from some recent assessments conducted this year to assure you that it's not all bad. So we've got assessors were very welcoming and everyone helped you feel more relaxed. Wanted to say a big thank you to everyone involved. I was very well organised. I think that said it. I was very well organised, and this helped my nerves. I really enjoyed my assessment practical. That's lovely to hear. My assessors were very friendly, professional, and helpful. They did their best to help me relax. My assessors have been so welcoming and friendly that it made me feel myself and less stressed about the assessment. The whole experience was 5-star for me, and I think I will always remember it. And you do. I remember who my assessors were, and we all remember who our assessors were, and we've been there. Like I say, we've been there. We know how stressful it is having somebody watch you, try your hardest, and like I say, it shouldn't be perfect, because if it is perfect, we have loads of questions to ask you in the oral board. Mistakes happen. It's your recovery and your adaptability and your control of the group, and also can you work through an exercise from A to B and demonstrate to us. So I think that's the end of my presentation. So do we have any questions that anybody would like to ask me?